Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
Innovative Thinkers, episode number 247. Innovative Thinkers. Subscribe to our mailing list to receive weekly updates and exclusive content delivered right to your inbox. Go to drfrancesrichards.com. That's drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. That's drfrancesrichards.com, drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. We promise we won't spam you or sell your information. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Entrepreneur marketer, CEO of Slidebean. Welcome, José Cayasso, known as Caya.
Thanks a lot for having me, Dr. Frances.
Why don't you give us a brief bio? And I hope I didn't butcher your name. And if I did, please accept my apology. Why don't you give us a brief bio about yourself and your business?
That's okay. My name is Caya. I go by Caya, and we started this company Slidebean about 5-6 years ago. I'm originally Costa Rican. You'll notice some leftovers of my accent. And yeah, so we started Slidebean as a platform to build presentations, very naively thinking that we were going to replace PowerPoint and take over the world. What ended up happening was that we ended up building a product that was really, really useful for entrepreneurs to work on their pitch decks. And you always say that you have to niche to win. And that was our original niche, but when we discovered the potential of that audience, we not only we were pretty good at content marketing. We did we had some good breakthroughs there on YouTube and on SEO. So, we became the SaaS company that speaks to a lot of other SaaS companies and startups in general. And, they look up to us as a reference of not only how to make a good pitch deck, but on how to run their company. And this is because we've been transparent throughout the process. Not only because we enjoy being transparent and we like helping, but because it's a great content marketing channel. Good content for our marketing channel. So, as we are now, we're a team of 27 people. Slidebean as a company, we still do pitch decks, but now we've expanded to a bunch of different things across the entrepreneurial experience, and expanded to a lot of other needs that entrepreneurs in that stage might have.
Talk about the story and the aha moment when you knew that your business was going to be successful.
That's funny. I think we never know that we were never that sure if our businesses are going to be successful, right? But, there have been some great breakthroughs. I remember when we closed our first round of funding, we had bootstrapped the company for about 18 months, or we had been bootstrapping for 18 months. And that was finally some validation and, of this effort that somebody at least was willing to give us money to continue working on this. And, it was the first time that we had, 12 months of runway ahead of us, because before that, bootstrapping, you never know, right? It could be 3 months. You could be out of business in 3 months. So that was, that lets you sleep at night better. But in the end, you're still in debt to the investors, if you will. You still have to deliver on the promise. Fundraising is not a milestone. In the end, it's not even your money. It's someone else's money that they're giving you to spend. But the other big breakthrough for us was when we became profitable. So after that was we raised our first round in 2015. And then in 2018 or so, it was a tough time. The beginning of that year, we were starting to run out of money. We hadn't been growing as fast as we wanted. So we had this choice. And I think many entrepreneurs face this choice at some point, even with their investors. They could continue working full speed and continue trying to grow full speed and continue developing their products full speed, which is what oftentimes investors expect. And that means that if the company goes out of business because they tried to operate full speed, then that's okay. Investors are ready to lose their money like that. It's a very painful experience. You have to let everybody go, so on and so forth. But we're sort of prepared for that. But we ended up choosing a different option, which was going profitable or trying to become profitable. And we did. So that was the other great breakthrough for the company. Around mid-2018, our company became profitable. We were able to cut costs. We were able to very delicately balance our revenue versus our expenses without reducing the team significantly. And we became profitable. And that we sort of became a different type of company then, because yes, we can't grow as fast. Yes, we don't have as much capital as we used to, but not as much flexibility to grow. But I sleep great at night because, we know that we can pay our bills. And we know that, the decisions that we make are based on our own projections for revenue, and that we don't depend on anybody else. We don't depend on additional investors to continue funding the company, at least for now.
Talk about raising capital, and what advice would you give someone if they're thinking about going that route of venture capitalists?
Yeah, I think that the biggest mistake we see, we work with hundreds of these companies every month. The biggest mistake we see is companies trying to raise money when they're not ready to raise money. I blame the startup press a little bit that makes raising money a very, it sounds like it's like any guy with an idea can raise money. That's not really the case. Most companies that raise money, I want to say 99 point something % of companies that raise money are raising money because they have traction, they have revenue, they have customers, or their team has been successful in the past. Either one of those. And then they raise money because they have proof that this idea is working, they have proof that this product is working, and they're raising money to speed that up. That's usually the story. But what we see in the early stages is a lot of people with an idea trying to raise money and saying, hey, I have this idea. I think it's $1 million or a multi-million-dollar idea. How do I raise capital? And it's funny because first, if they come to us and they work with our pitch decks, then we'll make money anyway. But we don't want to be like that. And we're very open about the fact that it's very hard to raise money if you don't have traction, if you don't have a team, if you don't have a product, if you don't have some customers. Investors expect to see that. And that is probably the biggest piece of advice. Raising money for the CEO is a full-time job. If you do that, if you decide to take on capital, you're going to spend the next 3 months talking to investors, following up with them, dealing with legal paperwork, and you're going to spend zero time in your product or growing your customers. So is your company ready to do that? Like, can your company continue to operate if you, CEO, are not in it? If you don't have anything, if you don't have a product, then you're literally not building a product and spending that time trying to raise money, which I think is a bad idea. Ideally, you should find yourself in a position where you have a couple of extra co-founders. They can continue growing the company. They can continue operating the business. And at the right time, you want to make that bet of your time and the company's time even to carve yourself out and do the fundraising stuff.
So talk about your ideal client. Who would be the ideal client that would use Slidebean?
So the ideal company is a seed or pre-seed or seed stage company that has enough traction to raise some capital, right? A promising idea, some validation, ideally some early traits of revenue. That's the perfect customer because they will come into they'll come into the platform. We'll have a bunch of pitch deck templates for them. Our team can jump in and assist and do proofreading and do design reviews. We have a team of experts, including myself, that can jump into calls with people, and that's included in our plans. So they can kind of get the most out of these resources that we're putting up for them. Come up with a good deck and ideally raise money. Like if the company keeps operating, hopefully they'll keep subscribed to Slidebean for other presentations. But the gateway is definitely the pitch deck. The less ideal company is the company that's too early, that comes in, pays us, and doesn't manage to raise capital, so they go out of business. So we lose a customer. It's bad because they lost the company, but from our side, from the business side, we also lost a customer.
Talk about the pandemic and pivoting with Slidebean.
Yeah, it's a twofold answer. So the first, pivoting, what we originally thought was that Slidebean was going to be a more broad presentation product that anybody for anything could use. The reality is that we underestimated, again, very naively, we underestimated how deeply rooted PowerPoint is across the board. Google is struggling and succeeding, but it's been a hard journey for them to also become new Office suite with their G Suite apps. Some people have a Gmail account, have access to Google Docs and Sheets and Slides, and they still go and pay Microsoft for Prime because it's just so deeply rooted for us. So that's just a reality that we underestimated. So the biggest pivot that we've made as a company is saying we are not going to be a presentation company anymore. That's not going to be our only thing. We are going to expand that to providing other services to these companies, to these entrepreneurs that have our ear. These entrepreneurs in which we have their ear. Why? Because they watch our content, they read our blog. Our website gets around 300,000 visits a month. Our YouTube channel gets around 1 million organic views per month. We have a huge audience of entrepreneurs that listen to us. So the question to us was, well, what else can we sell them? Some of them need a pitch deck, some of them don't. Some of them are designers and they don't need another tool. They're just going to do it on their own. What else can we sell them? So that was the biggest pivot for the company, kind of accepting or giving up on being just a presentation product, which is in the end what we set out to build originally. It takes time to make that decision, and it takes sort of time to sort of accept that you quote unquote failed. Your original premise was flawed and you failed at that. The company didn't fail. The company was still growing, but we had to accept that our idea failed, our original idea. So that's on pivoting. Now, on the pandemic, it's always a test, right? And a lot of times your job as a CEO is sort of put out fires. Some user complained and requested a refund. Some user is threatening to sue us. I don't know. That doesn't happen. It's just an example. But I don't know, like somebody quit and we have to, in an emergency, hire somebody new. Your job as a CEO a lot of time feels like you're just putting out fires, and there are more things that could require your help as the company grows bigger. And then, of course, the biggest one was pandemic last year. I was in Costa Rica then, and I had just flown back from New York, which was, I guess, a little bit lucky because I might have been stuck there for more than I wanted to. New York took a pretty bad hit. But yeah, as soon as we sent everybody home. We had everybody starting working from home, and we've been like that for 9 months now. So in the last 2-3 months, people occasionally visit the office, but we try to make it so that our office fits or seats like 30 people. We try to make it so that only 5 are there and that they keep their distances. That's on the team, but on the revenue side, we had a couple of slow months. Not drastically bad, catastrophic months for us. I think that was April and May, where evidently the news cycle was around the pandemic. I would watch the local news here in Costa Rica and Andrew Cuomo looking at how bad things were in New York, and we were sort of stuck in that news cycle, and that translated to people not looking to build a pitch deck, right? Not looking to start new companies. But as soon as we accepted that new normal, that reality, people started thinking about their companies again. A lot of people came up with new company ideas just based on the pandemic. And we were there to monetize on that. We were there to help them craft their ideas and help them pursue investors. And so we lost money those 2 months that were slow. I want to say it was a 20-30% reduction in our revenue. Again, not very critical. And then after that, revenue spiked back to normal levels and even higher, which we feel very humbled and very thankful for in a way. During those 2 months, we were prepared to, cut down our salaries. We cut every single disposable or easy cost that we could cut. But that's, of course, not enough when the majority of our cost is, of course, our payroll. So we were prepared to negotiate with our team, to try and have everybody, take a small cut so that we wouldn't have to let anybody go. But luckily, we didn't have to come to that. Nobody had their salaries reduced. And again, we realized that we were in this extremely unique and lucky position to not have to do that.
Caya, what can we do right now to support Slidebean?
Honestly, I get this question a lot. And back in the early stages, my answer would be like, use it and eventually pay us for it. Now that has shifted, of course, because asking people to pay for something is just a big of an ask. But now I think that the best help or the best support you can give is watching our content. I think, right now our YouTube channel is scratching 250,000 subscribers. Like I said, we had like 1 million views a month, which is crazy. And I think it's the best balance of giving you something in return for your time. I think that, the content that we're putting out there is super valuable. A lot of entrepreneurs have found it very, very valuable. So, check out our YouTube channel. I think it's a good gateway to everything that we do or every stuff that we can help you with. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if you're only planning to be one, I think that could be a good first step. And you're helping us by ideally sharing if you find it interesting.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
I love so many brands in the startup world. One of my favorite ones lately has been a company called ClickUp. It's like a project management software. There's a funny story with ClickUp because the first mainstream or startup-y cool project management platform was Monday.com. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. You've probably seen some ads because they're really, really intensive on YouTube ads. And we ended up adopting Monday.com and started using it. But then along came this other platform, ClickUp. And some people in the company were they made a real case about ditching Monday.com for ClickUp. I wasn't really using Monday.com. So I'm like, fine, if you guys think it's better, go ahead and switch. And we made that switch maybe a couple of years ago. But since then, I've seen ClickUp become sort of like this operating system for productivity, which is really interesting. That's one of my favorite companies out there. Another company we use and that I admire as well is a company called Intercom. They've been able to sort of democratize email onboarding, like automated email onboarding. Because what did you have before? Before something like Intercom came along, the ability to send an email to a user based on an activity that they took on their platform was really, really hard. It was hard you had to sort of program that functionality in. So it wasn't a marketing thing. It wasn't a customer support thing. It was a developer thing, a product thing to have a dynamic email system. And Intercom sort of made it easy, simple, cool for a marketing person to come up with really strong drip campaigns. So that's another company I'm I'm a big fan of. And then the last one I'll mention, which might be useful to you, and now that we're in a podcast, I guess it's a good example. It's a company called These. I love it when sort of like a company just comes up with an insanely better, easier way to do something. So, when you're editing a podcast or a video, you have to like sort of watch and listen and, and go and cut this script when, the script or the conversation whenever it's necessary. What Descript came up with, which is just so simple and insane that nobody else had come up with this before, is that they transcribe the podcast. So this conversation that we're having, you would see a transcript of everything you said and everything I said. And then to edit, you just like delete the text. So instead of having to use like editing software, you just edit it like you're editing a paragraph or a text, and that edits the audio. I was just baffled by somebody simplifying something so well.
Thank you for that. And I just invested in Descript and did not know that feature was available. That is really a value bomb that you drop, but it is phenomenal what they've come up with from the standpoint of when I'm transcribing all of this content. And I put in for a transcriber for transcription service, and they were charging me $25 to $40 per episode. And when you have 65 to 100 episodes, you can do the math versus using a transcription service platform, I should say, like Descript. So they definitely get a shout out.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of their company, their branding, a bunch of other things.
What is the best decision you've made as a leader?
I don't know if I can highlight something like some good personal decisions I've made. I'll start with that. I think in the early stages of the company, so I started Slidebean when I was 25, and at 25, at least in the context of Costa Rica, you're expected to have your life. You're expected to start figuring out your life a little bit, right? You're expected to start considering, buying a house. That's just like a cultural thing, right? And you had to. And even before that, when I started my previous company, I was 23. That was a younger me and not a lot of life expectations then. But one of the struggles that I had early on, and I guess that extends to most founders, is that you have to sort of live with this instability, right? If you have a good, decently paid job at 25, you can start making plans. You can start saving some money. You can start, thinking that, 1-2 years down the line, you might buy your first house, or I don't know. And when you're in a startup, you don't know. You have no idea what's going to happen in 1-2 years. It's very, very uncertain. So there's this thing of sort of learning to live in the moment and learning that there is no way in which you can make long-term plans because you just don't know what's going to happen. And you have to sort of forget about that or stop thinking about these long-term plans because it's just not going to happen yet, right? That's like a personal decision, something that you sort of need to accept as an entrepreneur in order to stay functional, I think. I guess business decisions from a company standpoint, I think that probably transparency has been the one thing that I've been pushy and insistent about, and I've had to convince people about it that weren't originally convinced. And I think that has worked great. There is, everybody in Slidebean knows how much our revenue is. Everybody in Slidebean knows our KPIs. Like that information is open internally, even for our YouTube channel and for our content. We've put out there, for example, we released our 2015 financials, all of it, salaries, expenses, revenue, all the 2015 stuff. And we'll probably do that with 2016 soon. Why? Because it helps entrepreneurs sort of see what a venture-backed company looks like at that stage. And investors pushed back because they didn't want us to release this information publicly. But my take here was, I think that there's value in this stuff. You just don't find it easy. And if we can be transparent, if we sort of perceive that this transparent company, I think that that's going to translate into a lot of value down the road. I can't prove it. I have no idea. This is a hunch. Like I'm pitching this to you, but we've been able to find a balance of how much information we release. For example, our salaries aren't public. I think that that's just too awkward, but a lot of other stuff is. And I think that has helped a lot.
I admire the fact that you started at such a young age. Talk about becoming an entrepreneur. Is that something that you've always desired to be?
No, not at all. There's this funny story that I'm a bit ashamed of, which is when I started my first company, this was a mobile app. This was just me getting together with a good friend of mine and saying, hey, I have this idea for a game. Let's just build it. And to validate if this is a good idea, why don't we do a Kickstarter campaign, see if people give us money for it? And we did. And we successfully funded the campaign. But when we sort of went live with the campaign, we started pitching a bunch of different press to see if we could get covered. I and my friend Philippe, who was my co-founder then, pitched TechCrunch. So TechCrunch called me because he left my phone number. So Josh Constantine from TechCrunch called me. Hey, my name is Josh Constantine. I'm from TechCrunch. I'm doing a piece on you guys. I think the product that you're building, the Kickstarter company, looks really cool. And I had to ask him, what TechCrunch? How do you spell that? And that's how far away I was from the startup world. That I was miles away from the startup world. So I had no idea how a tech company started. I had no idea what an angel investor was, what venture capital was. This was not so long ago. This was 2012 when we started that business. So I had to go through this sort of crash course on how all this stuff works. We did an accelerator called Dream It, which was an insane crash course / soft landing into how all this stuff works. But no, I didn't expect to be an entrepreneur. It was sort of a little bit by accident. We sort of came up with a tech company that sort of taught us the meaning of what a startup was.
Thank you for being so transparent and sharing that story. Talk to a younger you. What advice would you give to a younger you?
I think failing is a great lesson. And the sooner you start failing at things, the quicker you can learn. I'm 32 now, and I got lucky to be able to start one company when I had no responsibilities, and the second company, Slidebean, when I had some responsibility. Why? Because if you can fail at 22, 23, it's a great position to fail. You can still probably go live with your parents. But you probably hopefully don't have a lot of debt. You don't have kids. You don't have anybody that depends on you. So that is a fantastic time to fail. The older you get, the harder it is to fail because you have responsibilities. You have people who depend on you. And that makes starting companies a lot harder. That makes the decision a lot harder. So, if I would say something to my younger self is, get started with this early on. Like if you have an idea, just pursue, try to build something around it early on. The other one is, I regret a little bit how late I was into the YouTube stuff. I started digital animation, so I'm a videographer by trade. But I only really started paying attention to YouTube very recently. I'm saying the last 5 years or so. Before that, I didn't. And I feel very sorry about that because, I knew what YouTube was. I started, understanding a little bit of what vlogging meant. And I was always tempted to sort of produce content, but I never did. And that's just stupid. If you're tempted to do something and you're so young and you have the time, do it. I think that if I had started producing videos for YouTube, back then, I'd have a huge audience by now. You're never late. I don't think you can be late to YouTube. There's always new YouTubers coming in, and that's okay. But yeah, I guess that's the advice. If you have a spark of doing something, and especially if you're young, don't waste a minute. Go ahead and do it.
Caya, I want you to have a monologue with someone, and I want you to name this person who you're talking to, and they inspired you and gave you the most advice, the most profound advice. Who's that person? And give us the monologue.
The most profound advice. This time I'm going to talk mostly on business advice. I think that one pivotal moment in the company was when we were in 500 startups. Slidebean went through 500 startups. And our point of contact through the program was Purnima. And then Purnima, I remember I had some insane fights with her because what she came in and said is guys, your business is not working. I think that your business model is flawed. I think that we were charging very little money for the product. And I think that at this pricing, you're going to go out of business and you have no scalable way to grow your customers. She came and gave us this slap in the face in the first couple of weeks of the program. And it was really weird and painful because I want to say painful. It was weird and upsetting, I want to say. Why? Because we had been working on this for years. We thought that we understood our customers. We thought that we understood what we wanted to build. And he was this external new person coming in and saying that it's all wrong. I remember we had some extremely heated arguments, along the lines of you don't know our product like we do. We've been working on this for longer. That's not the company that we want to build, one that charges so much for the product. And, she just kept insisting on us doing these tests until finally we said, okay, fine. We'll prove you wrong. We'll do an A/B test and we'll put the pricing that you're suggesting and we'll put our own pricing and we'll compare and we'll see which one works best. And very clearly she was right and our pricing concept was wrong. But we needed, and that's the thing that we hadn't had before. We had been working on this for 18 months now, and nobody had come to us and sat down with us and said, guys, your business model is wrong, rethink it. Nobody had the authority, to come and do that, or the knowledge in the space, the knowledge in the SaaS business world to say we needed to change it. And if she hadn't done that, we would be out of business because we would have kept on that a flawed premise and on that flawed business model. I've talked about Purnima many times. We did an interview for our YouTube channel a few months after the program. And I think she knows how thankful we are. Hopefully she knows how thankful we are for her confronting us then. But that's the thing, like many entrepreneurs don't have access to that and don't have access to someone with enough authority to tell them that what they're doing is going in the wrong direction. And that's unfortunate, of course, because if somebody that doesn't know a lot about this comes in and argues, like you'll dismiss that as like, no, they don't really know what they're talking about. It had to be somebody who we were stuck with through the 500 program to force us to do that. And I think that a lot of companies could be saved or could be successful if they had access to someone like that. And if they paid attention, like we're stubborn, of course. And we know, we know, like we are the founders of our own companies. We know our customers better than anybody. But even then, sometimes we are wrong. And we have to sort of be prepared to accept that and hopefully find people that can tell us that we're wrong.
The word is listening. Tell us, what is that resounding sound or message that your generation is telling us that we should be listening to?
I think that that's a deeper question. If we're talking generations, I think that the biggest reality with this new generation, with our millennial generation, is there's a lot of talk about us not wanting to commit or to us wanting to live in the moment, or us wanting to spend money in experiences versus in buying a house, for example. But there's also a variable of this generation. We have the capacity that your generation maybe didn't have to build something from scratch, put it out there, or build a persona, not only a persona, a character, I don't know, a YouTube series, a comedy series, or a company. We can build that from scratch. And the tools to do that are available to anybody. The tools to do that is a phone, a laptop, and an internet connection. That's all you need to build something. And it's insane that we've sort of been blessed with this capacity. And you see that across the board. I recently got into TikTok, and what's TikTok but a bunch of creators that probably hadn't come up with another way to sort of get whatever their talent was out there. And you see people with the weirdest, least expected talents, like becoming YouTube celebrities. I follow this girl called me Chris, who does these like little funny characters. Like I'm sure she's a natural born actor / comedian that probably nobody had heard about. And suddenly there's this platform that sort of lets her create a 10 million audience that watches her every day. I'm thankful for what technology has allowed us to do as a generation. And, if there's a listening part of it is, it's not about us wanting, it's a little bit about us wanting to shine. It's a little bit about us wanting to, other people to know who we are and to follow what we do. I think that most entrepreneurs and, content creators have that spark, but it's a lot about just taking advantage of this stuff that's out there. It's an insane feeling when you can inspire other people, even if it's with a joke or with business advice. Like, it's been a fantastic experience.
Speaking of inspiration, talk about your top 2 influencers and what lessons do they teach you?
Oof, my top 2 influencers. These are people I watch and follow very carefully. I'm a big fan of Johnny Harris, who is a former Vox reporter, now independent YouTuber. But I'm a big fan of his content. I think that he's come up with a new way to do journalism that we hadn't seen before. It's mixing journalism and art and animation and storytelling to create these little stories that in the end, they're informing you, you're learning. But yeah, I think that few people have the skill that he has to tell a story visually and orally or verbally. That's one. What's the other? Yeah, I could point, I guess, to a few CEOs of different companies that I follow. One of them is Josh, the former CEO of Bearmetrics. Bearmetrics was this SaaS tracking company. And he sort of started this blog, kind of like, I guess, processing his own frustration or the struggles that he had running a company, the doubt that he had, questions that he had, and he sort of found a way to sort of channel that into a blog that we all read, that we sort of all connected with him eventually or inevitably because we were facing a lot of the same struggles, but him kind of talking about them and not from a position of authority saying, hey, this is how we did this and we know it's the right course, or this is how I solved this personal situation, this is how it works. Some of his content was like that, but some of his content, I guess you could read between the lines or sometimes more openly about the fact that he didn't know what course to take. And that was extremely good advice, I think. A little bit of inspired by both of them in the way we create our own content, which is allowing yourself to be vulnerable as well. Not only, I guess that I'm a little bit of an influencer inevitably, mostly thanks to the YouTube channel, but I think that doesn't mean that I'm the sole authority and that I know everything. Like many times, I think the content that people connect with the most is the content that shows, who's behind that mask, the human being behind the influencer.
Is there a social cost connected to your business or brand?
There isn't, at least not officially. We had this little rule a few years ago where we would spend about 1% of our profits in social impact initiatives. And we did social impact initiatives that were related to design. And we did that. I think this was 2018, and we did that for the whole year. So it was cool because we had to pick one different charity or one different program every month and kind of like go with that. I think that was a cool initiative, a badly executed initiative. So in the end, we don't want to, it's not about bragging that we're giving to charity. That's not always the case. But I think there was an intention to be that there was a story connected to the Slidebean brand around this. And I think that we failed to do that. So we stopped and we reassessed that. We kept some of the charities that we were doing. So for example, there's this, many of them were down here in Costa Rica, but there was this kind of technical university for minorities and for people who can't afford a higher end university, and they offer scholarships. All of their students are on a scholarship that's subsidized by the government and by different institutions. So we generated a good relationship with them. We've actually hired a bunch of people out of their school, but we also sponsored a couple of them through class. That was some really exciting stuff that we did. And again, we failed of telling a better story. It's on our homework list to rethink that and kind of like relaunch it as we rethink it.
Let's talk about legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
Well, I'm a father now. I have a 7-year-old daughter. And I guess that's that's probably the biggest legacy that we as humans can leave to the world, right? Another human being sort of like taught by you. That's half of that. And the other half is my dream as an entrepreneur is to build a product that becomes part of that drastically transform how people do something. I would love to do that. I know that Slidebean might not be that, or probably isn't that. Why? Because it's a niche product. It's only for entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs are a small percentage of the total population. And that's fine. That's fine. I'm okay with this. I'll keep working on Slidebean until we sell the company. But I don't know what my next company is going to be, but if I had to pick, it would be something along those lines, right? It'd be something that can impact a lot of people. That inevitably translates to probably a tech product for end users, not necessarily a social network, but something that just everybody can use. I would be really excited if my legacy is a product that fundamentally transformed or that inspired people to do things differently. We still think of Steve Jobs when we grab our iPhone and when we grab our Mac, and Steve Jobs is a huge personality, but it's a combination of the products that he built and the way he sold them, the way he marketed them that makes him still remembered to this day. So I think that'd be, I don't know if I can achieve that. I don't think I'm Steve Jobs or the next one, but if I can build something that people remember me by, that'd be great for the product, not necessarily for the name.
Now, did you have former training in tech?
I studied digital animation, which is a design plus tech career. As I came out of high school, I did 1 year of computer science, which I hated, and I quit that to move to a more design-oriented career. But that's as much as tech training I had, other than being a geek and just enjoying tech.
Yeah, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
Yeah, I think the question would have been sort of like the personal balance or the personal weight of starting this company. And you indirectly asked this question, and I touched on it a little bit. Who do you have to be mentally, or how do you have to transform, or how do you have to see life, or or adopt your day-to-day activities in order to be an entrepreneur and survive that? The answer to that question was stop making long-term plans, at least at the very beginning of the entrepreneurial journey, because you can't, right? In the end, the more safe you are, or the more risk you take, the bigger the chances of the company succeeding. Right now, I have a daughter, I have a mortgage, so I'm not going to take extreme risks. And for good or worse, I'm not going to take extreme risks on company decisions. Why? Because I can't really afford to lose my job right now. But that extends to the 27 people that work for Slidebean. We want them to feel safe. We want them to feel that there is no runway and that the company might go out of business in 9 months if we don't raise additional capital. Those are risks that not everybody is willing to take. Not every employee is willing to live on that uncertainty. But for the founders themselves, especially in the early stages, just letting themselves go of that long-term planning and just enjoying the moment. I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we've learned.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
I'm ready.
Your first job?
I was a call center agent for Intel.
Your favorite color?
Green.
The last movie you saw?
I saw Tenet the other day.
You relax doing what?
Playing tennis.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
My favorite band is Coldplay.
Your favorite dance song?
Blinding Lights.
What food you eat every week no matter what?
Serrano. Jamón Serrano, which is this prosciutto from Spain.
Your favorite month?
October. No, December. Sorry, December.
Work out or hit the couch?
Hit the couch.
Thank you so much, Caya, for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and support your business? And don't forget to give all your social media handles.
My Twitter handle is Caya here, so Caya here. So the best way to connect is probably through our YouTube channel. Like I said, a lot of our own experience with Slidebean, a lot of lessons learned from other companies. We put all that stuff out there on YouTube. So just look for Slidebean on YouTube and you'll find us.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me.
Our guests have sent us so much swag, books, and giveaways this year. I can't wait to announce our monthly winner. So if you want exclusive content delivered right to your inbox and to enter into our monthly drawing, go to drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. That's drfrancisrichards.com. drfrancisrichards.com. That's drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. We promise we will not spam you or sell your information.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.